Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Might Help, Can't Hurt Conversations with Leaders, Doers, and Friends. And this is the bit, Mara, where we kind of stall at the beginning so people find the feed.
Okay.
So it's vamping is what we used to call it.
Well, I feel like we should have a song and dance or something.
Yeah, just a little something to kind of get it going, while we're going on. For those of you watching on the replay, as I'm sure many of you will, the place to find Mara online is onesolutionglobal.org. Did I do that well? Did I do that right?
You did that right. Thank you. Yeah.
Like I just learned that a minute ago.
I'm impressed actually that you retained that from a couple minutes ago till now. I would have totally botched it.
Yeah, no, I'm reasonably impressed as well.
Problemslocal.com. What?
So for those of you who are new to this format, this really is a chance for you to eavesdrop in on some of the interesting conversations that I get to have with interesting people about life and what's going on at the moment and how they're doing. And so, Mara, I guess that's probably the best question to start with is, how you doing?
It's so funny. I feel like I haven't been asked that question in a while. Probably because I've been avoiding my phone a lot. I've been doing good. I've had to kind of streamline my input-output ratio a little bit because in the beginning of coronavirus, I was like having so much fun catching up with old friends on Zooms at night, playing Quiplash and things I'd never even heard of before with like my Chicago fitness moms group. So I was really embracing
We've gotten hardcore Cards Against Humanity.
Do you? Oh, that's good. Yeah. I haven't done any Cards Against Humanity since the pandemic, but have done bingo and costumes, which was awesome. So much fun with my high school friends, like childhood friends. It was really fun. And then Quiplash with my Chicago fitness moms group. So normally it's a group that we go and we meet in a park and we do workouts with our babies in the strollers. It's great because you don't have to get childcare, but obviously not happening right now. So we did Quiplash, which I'd never done before. That was fun. So, I was doing a lot of different things. Marco Polo is an app I'd never heard of before, but where you can send little videos back and forth to friends.
Oh, I've not seen that one.
So it was really cool because I was like reconnecting in a much deeper way with a lot of people that I love dearly, but unless we like fly to see one another, we don't get a lot of quality contact. So it was really cool until I noticed that my 7-month-old son started, I joke, taking away my technology privileges. I know that a lot of moms who have older children and are doing, at-home schooling are having to take away iPads from their kids. And I feel like my 7-month-old has been sort of forcing me to put my iPhone and my laptop away. And I've noticed he's the most delightful baby until I get distracted from him on either Zoom or Marco Polo or texting or whatever. So it just made my life a lot easier to kind of tune out at least 50% of that stuff. So when I have work things, my husband and I kind of juggle watching him while one of us works and vice versa. And I'm still doing a little bit of the socializing, but it's dropped off quite a bit because it turns out my baby is much more pleasant when I'm present.
Yeah.
Which is, someone said to me early on, this whole coronavirus experience would be wildly different if we didn't have technology. And she was like, I hate to be the one to say it, but I kind of think it would be awesome. Like if we couldn't stay connected over the internet, like how different this would be. And obviously there's a lot of things that are wonderful about it, but I do kind of appreciate that my baby has forced me to distance from the technology a little bit.
Well, just tell Teo there's a $5 in the mail and a toy, to thank him for letting me have you just for a little bit. Just a little
bit. He's napping. Otherwise, this would be happening.
So now, the Richard Carlson books, the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and then Don't Sweat the Small Stuff at Work. Don't sweat the small stuff in Chicago. Don't sweat there's like a million of them. And he wrote one that was called, What About the Big Stuff? And you've been through a lot of big stuff in my mind, and you help people who are going through a lot of what would be called big stuff.
Yeah.
And we as a planet are kind of going through some big stuff.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what about the big stuff? Discuss.
Yeah, I was going to say, how long do we have? Right before I joined you on this again, because I just put Teo down for a nap, so I had a little moment and I was looking at the news for the first time today, and I just saw an article about the head of the World Health Organization warning against impatiently rushing to reopen. And I only got to skim like the first, quarter of the article because I needed to jump on this, but I couldn't help but notice the parallel of just my life is that when a lot of big things have happened in my life recently, and there's this impatient desire to want to rush things back to normal, but there's something really, really beautiful that happens when you can't, or when you encourage yourself not to, because you have to sit longer in the discomfort and the not knowing.
Yeah.
And I find that that's when really new layers of insight and realization can come to the surface, because you have to sit outside your comfort zone for long enough to really get past all the stuff you normally think you need in order to be okay in life. So I just thought that was interesting, because I can see we're sort of at this edge. Like, I think people were not enjoying it, but like willing to tolerate what's happening with the coronavirus shutdown for a little while now. And now it's like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. And I think that's kind of when bigger transformation can start to occur, is when people get even pushed past the point of, well, this is getting ridiculous. I could tolerate this for so long, but I can't tolerate this anymore. So I know for me,
that threshold is that threshold as arbitrary as it seems? Because it seems to me like my threshold generally comes when I see the end in sight.
Right.
Like suddenly I'm like, oh, I've had enough of this. But I hadn't had enough of it before they said it might be over soon.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. It reminds me of the summer that my parents talked this overnight camp, into allowing my 6-year-old sister to come with me.
Right.
Even though she was below the age limit. You were supposed to be 7 in order to go to sleepaway camp, but she was 6. And they said, oh, she's really close to her older sister, Mara, because I was 7 years older than her. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. And she was. She did amazing until the last night, when she knew that she was going home the next day. She lost it completely, had like an inconsolable meltdown for 12 hours straight. I kept going, Callie, we're going home tomorrow. Like, it's like the end was in sight. She completely lost her shit. Yeah, and I feel that way too. Like, just the mere mention that certain states are starting to open up again, it makes me feel like we should be opening up again. But then I look and it's like, Chicago's numbers are worse than they've ever been. Yesterday, we had the absolute worst numbers we've ever had. And apparently, if you take New York out of the equation, the entire United States is having the worst numbers they've ever had. So it is
interesting timing, to be sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we're all going to have to dig a little deeper than we want to.
Yeah.
And really stick with the discomfort.
Now, are you finding any difference? Because you kind of bridge a couple of worlds where you come from, like, middle class white people. I mean, that's that world. But you no, really, but you work with populations that vastly vary.
Yeah.
And are you noticing any difference amongst socioeconomic populations to how people are responding, or is it sort of a human being thing, or both? I mean,
no, it is vastly different, and not, yeah, both.
Okay, well, thank you.
Michael, can't hurt. I don't know. Is that a good enough answer? Yeah, I mean, I found it really interesting. You know, a couple weeks ago, we had one of the parents from the Southside Chicago community that we've done some work with here join us on a virtual sort of summit thing that we were doing a couple Saturdays ago. And she was expressing, as a Black woman, how frustrated she was that, you know, that when you look purely at the numbers, 80% of the deaths in Chicago are in the Black community. And there was a lot of blaming going on in the media around that being just ignorance. And she pointed out that the, what's the word they use? The vital jobs, the necessary work that needs to be happening.
Yeah, essential. Essential,
thank you. That it's, you know, people from her community that are often doing those jobs. Keeping the grocery stores open, keeping the drugstores open, driving the buses for the people that do need to get to those jobs. And she pointed out a few other things. And it's funny because I hadn't really had a thought about it at all. Like, I wasn't one of those people that thought they were being ignorant. Like, I just hadn't really thought much about it. And when she brought it up, I just realized it's so interesting how you have such a limited perspective on all things. And this is true in these times as well, in the coronavirus times as well. And I just realized, like, as much as everyone keeps saying that we're all in the same boat, you realize someone said it, we're all in the same sea. We're in a lot of different boats. Some people are on yachts and some people are in, you know, rickety canoes and everything in between. And so, you know, I definitely feel like it's been good to unite because we all feel threatened by a virus. You know, it's like, oh, it's a virus. That has nothing to do with any individual person or group of people. So there's some sense of unity there, but there's a huge divide in terms of how people get affected by that. And then I think in terms of what we're going to see in the rebuilding of it, there's going to be huge differences country to country based on all different variables, from socioeconomic to everything.
Are you still in touch with your Middle East community that you're working with?
A little bit. So Stephanie, who ran our Middle East program, actually moved back to DC for personal family reasons and work reasons. So we don't have someone based there. So we have like bits of contact, but not consistent contact. But she was telling us about one of the fellows who participated in our program last year, who had this incredible opportunity to study in Israel. So he actually got out of Gaza right before this happened, and he was kind of sharing with her, and then she shared with me how different his experience is being kind of stuck in a place where he's thought of as the enemy. And he actually doesn't feel, you know, comfortable necessarily going back either, because there's a lot of thinking about having spent time with that enemy. So, you know, I'm in a very different situation than someone like that person is, for sure.
No, so now I'm only going to do this to you because you named the company One Solution Global, but it seems to me that, you know, this is global. So what's the one solution? Go on then.
Well, what we mean by that, and what I do believe, is that independent of all the variations and differences that we see in the world that are very real, the only thing I've ever seen change those things is humans having the insight and the freedom of mind to decide to create a new normal, to decide that the disparity that exists doesn't have to stay that way, and we have to do something about it. And the only way I've ever seen people become empowered to make change is when they feel better. So it's very hard, myself included, to want to contribute to my own life, but to even then think of improving the lives of others or my community or the systems that affect my community if I myself don't feel solid and well from the inside out. And so our focus is on helping people learn what they need to discover to reconnect with and we say reconnect, we're not giving people some magic thing that they didn't have before. We're really pointing people to an innate resilience and well-being that has always resided within them, because everyone is born equal in that way.
Right.
We're all born with the life force. We're all born with resilience. We're all born with the potential and the capacity for new creative thought. And so before we do all the things that we do socially that messes with that, we have that capacity within us. And so our work is designed to point people within to rediscover that capacity so that then they can take that feeling of well-being, the surge of good ideas and energy that comes from that, and then do what they want to do to change the trajectory of their own lives. And invariably, and I've had to have this proven to me, I wouldn't have believed it had I not seen it in so many different extreme circumstances over the years, that when people feel better, they naturally do better. And that doing better ripples out beyond themselves pretty quickly. Like when people start to feel better in their own lives, they immediately go, I got leftovers. How can I share? You know, they have well-being leftovers and they just want to give. And so I've seen people come up with brilliant ideas for how to help really persistent, annoying disparities and inequalities and things that have been, haunting their people or their communities for years and sometimes centuries.
Yeah. I love the simplicity of it. You know, the well-being leftovers makes sense to me. It's like, I know that. I know that there's a generosity that I noticed in myself long before I had any understanding of why, that when I was okay, I was actually all the traits I thought I should have were there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I didn't spend much time feeling okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't come up very often.
And it's a very beautiful, encouraging, unifying thing that I witness over and over again is how universal that is. That when people feel better, within moments they want to give it away. I mean, it's just so cool. It's like when I think about Dejan, who started the Rebels for Peace with us, which is our youth movement. I mean, it was within seconds. He suddenly saw, oh, I don't have to think in terms of retaliation. I don't have to live my life thinking I got to get them before they get me. When he had this insight and he suddenly saw, oh, that frees me from a life of looking over my shoulder and probably becoming a statistic really quickly. The second he got that freedom, it was like 20 minutes later, he's like coming up to me at this. He's like, hey, I got to do this. And I was literally like, do what? And he's like, what you just helped me see, I got to help other people see. It was like the tiniest little gap between his own feeling better and wanting to give it away. And I've seen that over and over and over again across the globe, no matter the situation. And it's so encouraging and gives so much hope for how quickly the world could change because that's true.
Yeah, there's a video that we, with permission, share of one of a client who I did a demo, an intensive over a few days with, and he was a soldier with PTSD and various things. And at the end of the 3-day intensive, I had him come up and in front of the group to share, and he was teaching. I mean, he was brilliant. And about 20 minutes in, he stopped and he looked at everyone and went, y'all know I only just learned this, right? But he was seeing it so clearly that actually he was communicating it beautifully. Yeah. And I agree. There is something kind of going, it's more of a, oh, okay.
Right.
Than this big thing that we've got to learn and practice and remind ourselves of. And, just suddenly different things become obvious.
Well, and that's why, we haven't frankly put it as like the mission statement on our website, but it might be worth considering, is it is that basic and ordinary. And I don't think there's a human on the planet that can't just relate to it and go, oh, that's true. Is that when people feel better, they do better. So if you want to create a better world, you have to help people feel better first. There's no doing it on the outside. People still feel bad. And I have 1,000,001 examples of this that I've seen in the different places that we've been in the world, whether it's Congo or Gaza or Chicago, is there are so many well-intentioned organizations that try to give resources that don't get used because people who feel bad don't even know how to use the resources. And I'm like, yeah, me too. You could give me a free gym membership, for example, to encourage me to take good care of my body and be healthy. But if I'm exhausted and stressed out and hate myself or my life or what have you, I don't care that it's free. I'm not going because I just don't have the energy to use it. And so I think there's 1,000,000 examples like that of where we're innocently trying to fix things from the outside in, but people can't take advantage of it until they feel better on the inside. And that's why we call it the one solution.
No, like a bunny rabbit. No, hey, Teo. So have you ever heard me talk about Rat Park?
No, what's that?
So Rat Park was an experiment. What happened is, I remember the story, was they realized when the Vietnam War was going on that there were more than 50% of soldiers in the Vietnam War were openly taking heroin. Like it was, that the numbers, it was rampant. And suddenly somebody thought ahead and went, this is going to be a real problem when they come home. This is hundreds of thousands of young men who are all going to be heroin addicts. We need to create programs. We need to do this. And there was a lot of different research done. The most interesting one being something called Rat Park, which was a scientist who wanted to see the effect of environment on behavior. So with rats, which were considered worthy experimental things.
Right.
Nobody liked them. They're not cute, right? And so what they did is they would introduce sugar water with heroin and just plain water. And if they put many rats in a cage, they would all go to the heroin, sugar water. But they created this alternate environment, which they called Rat Park jokingly, which was like rat heaven. It was just tons of space, and grass, and, little rat tire swings. I don't know what was there, but it was the kind of an environment that rats loved, and they didn't overcrowd it. And they found that the rats wouldn't touch the heroin water. They all went to the healthy water. And the conclusion that they came to is, oh, well, it's about environment. And that seemed to be borne out by the fact that when the soldiers did come home, less than 9% of the 50+% continued to take heroin. So something that is supposedly, one of the worst addictions you can have, people just spontaneously dropped when they were in a new environment. The reason that all the initiatives off Rat Park failed, as far as I can tell, was because they assumed that environment was external. And what the heart of what you do, the heart of what I do, just points to is, no, it's the internal environment. If we are in that horrific, high stress internal environment, we will grab at anything to get relief from it, including, fuck the pandemic, I need to get out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
When we are in a great internal environment, when we feel better, when we feel good, we're in a good feeling. We're not inclined to do stuff like that. We're not inclined to do stuff that is obviously harmful to us.
Right.
Or others.
Well, that's what I was going to say is I think one of the things that I'm fascinated by, and again, it's hard to figure out how to communicate all this stuff well in a succinct amount of time, but this isn't just true for people who are doing, let's say, harmful things in society, like robbings, killings, that we're talking about the fact that the internal environment that humans exist in is what creates everything in the world. So even things like the politicians who are running our systems and making laws, and the authorities that are deciding what our criminal justice system looks like and what it focuses on, what our healthcare system looks like and what it focuses on. everything that humans build is built on the foundation of the feeling in which we live in, or in a more kind of new agey or scientific way, you could say the state of consciousness that people live in. So nothing can get built in society, whether it's drug dens and, places where people do bad things, or even the good things that created are coming from the state of consciousness on which people are starting from, where their minds are creating from. Nothing in this world, nothing in society gets created until a human creates it. And a human creates from whatever state of consciousness they're in. So we're interested in both, stopping the destructive patterns by helping people feel better, but also, and I think coronavirus is an interesting time to look at this, is how do we invent and create systems that are healthy and equitable and sustainable for nature, for humankind, that focus on people's health and their education and their well-being. And I find it really interesting that we're, and a lot of people by this point have talked about this. I'm not the first person, so this is not a unique thought, but we're kind of getting a little bit of the slate wiped clean in terms of how our economy holds itself together, how our healthcare system holds itself together. And I think we have a really beautiful opportunity to transform those things, improve on those things, rebuild those things, dare I say, completely reinvent them, rethink them. But that's only going to be possible if people are doing it from an improved state of mind, an improved level of well-being. That's why we say it's one solution, is it really needs to be a factor that's greatly considered in every conversation about every facet of society, not just the super problematic ones that we can all agree. Yes, murdering people is not a good thing, but it's also like, why are we building our healthcare system in that way? Is it being built on a fundamental insecurity because humans that created it are insecure? Because the humans that created it are thinking greedily or thinking inefficiently? That's a reflection of how people feel in their everyday lives, and it's weird to think of it like that.
So do I have to stop hating people who do things I don't like?
No. You can totally, but you have to live in the echo of that bad feeling then. So you can, but I would say it's good to know that you're doing it, because you're going to have to live with it, whatever kind of backwash that shoots at you.
Well, probably not a great plan to help them change anything.
Definitely not. Yeah. People don't respond well to that, turns out.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah. You can test it out in I was going to say like the coffee shop, but not these days. You can test it out in the grocery store or the drugstore. Where's your family?
Yeah, no, that's good. I've got a ready-made lab right here.
Yeah. But what about you? What do you feel like? How have you been during this time? I feel like I've seen you a lot, but I've never asked you that question.
And that's the thing. We're always working. It's like for me, I've found it fascinating watching me behave just like everybody that I sit and watch and judge. Like, I'll see the people protesting on the news and go, what are they thinking? And then I'll notice like, oh, it doesn't matter if I take my mask off. But it's different because it's me, and I must know what. I have become very conscious of me being just as big an idiot as I tend to judge other people as. But on the whole, it's been great. We've been incredibly close, close knit as a family, same kind of thing where it's like boredom is a great healer.
Yeah.
Like, because boredom sparks creativity, boredom sparks connection. If you don't disappear into distraction, which is just harder and harder to do. Mm-hmm. As Nina wrote about a month ago, I think I finished Netflix. What do I do now?
I finished Netflix.
Right. You start getting creative. You start engaging in new ways. And I think that's part of the hope for me, is that this interruption of, and possibly death of, normal actually opens up a reimagined future that, especially if it's, as you're saying, reimagined from a better place inside us,
Right.
might be kind of cool.
Right. And that's the part I can't tell. Like, I'm really curious about, but I have no idea. I definitely feel like I've gone through a lot of evolution and transformation. And I get the feeling, but I never know, because I realize I'm distorted by my own glasses, if you will. Like, because I've had that, I kind of feel like other people have too, but I don't know if I'm making that up, you know? So it's like, are people actually really feeling, you know, aside from, and I know this sounds like a big aside, but I do think it is, and aside from people's concerns about, like, am I going to have a paycheck next week? And what are we going to do about the fact that everyone in my company got furloughed? Is that coming back? Like, there is an aside from that, because, and this is something I'm really hoping that people are gathering, is that there is a lot more to life than just that. And I think a lot of people are having richer experiences outside of their work life that they never would have had. I mean, we basically had between, as you know, my family went on grief quarantine. So we had like 3 months of no work because of death in the family. And then this hit. So it's funny, because I had said, you know, if we'd moved to Norway, because my husband's Norwegian, if we'd moved to Norway, like intelligent people, we would have had paid maternity and paternity leave. Well, it hasn't been paid, but we've had maternity and paternity leave for the entire first 7 months of Teo's life, which is pretty amazing. It's been beautiful. And I know for a fact that we are experiencing him in such a different way. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm loving it to bits and pieces. So yeah, like I said, I don't know if other people are having experiences like, oh, wow, I'm getting to know my children in a deeper way than I ever have. I think they are. I have a feeling.
Oh, we are, and our kids are grown-ups.
Yeah.
You know, it's because I think the thing is, for everyone in my circle, this is the biggest thing we've dealt with beyond deaths in the family, illnesses, you know, things that are very, very personal. You know, we haven't had a good war, and I use the word loosely, but you know, my parents' generation, World War II, you know, the generation in between, Korea and Vietnam, and you know, there was a sort of a growing up with a great awareness that what's going on in the world could affect you personally. Whereas that's not been a part of our lives. I'm older than you, and I haven't had it in my life. And it's,
well, I feel like people said 9/11 was going to be the defining, you know, thing of my generation. And it certainly did change the world, and it changed our understanding of our place in the world. But this is just so different.
Yeah.
And I'm very hesitant to say this publicly. So this is when I should shut my mouth. But it's just it's too strange to me that, like, the environment was at a breaking point. And then something totally non-man-made, like a virus, shut humans down for a while. And I just think there's something too non-coincidental about that. Like, I remember when I had this feeling when Eric and I went to South Africa for the second One Solution conference that we did in Cape Town in 2017. And I'd never been to Africa, and we went on a safari, and it was so cool. But I remember having this kind of morbid but beautiful realization as we were riding around this nature reserve in South Africa with conservationists who were explaining to us all the work that they've been doing. Basically what I got, the gist of what I got from listening to this guy is, humans keep screwing things up in nature and with the wildlife in South Africa, and then trying to fix it only to realize that how we tried to fix it was actually just creating more of a problem. So nature keeps putting us back in our place. And he gave examples of like, it seemed like the elephants were eating this one kind of tree too much. So they tried to divert the elephant migration pattern and plant some of these trees, but then that messed with the flow of the river. And then that messed with the giraffe. I mean, it was like, you realize there's this much bigger thing called nature that's really doing it all. And humans are down here tinkering with it, being like, oh, we moved that too far over there. Let's move that. And nature's like, nah, just move out of the way. And I remember saying to Adek, like my husband, who I run the nonprofit with, like, are we like the conservationists? Like, is one solution just humans trying to tinker with something that nature's really got covered? Like, why are we doing anything? And I don't have an answer to that. Like, I'm still doing it and I still believe in it. But I got reminded of that ride in the Jeep with the conservationist when coronavirus hit. It's like, oh, nature saw an imbalance and nature stepped in and was like, no, humans, we're always going to course correct. We as in.
Here's where I think that what you guys are doing is not that.
Oh, good. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Is that you're not telling people what to do, how to behave, how to fix it, what the solution is in terms of going out. I'm surrounded by dogs and I'm allergic to them. So I'm going to I love them, but they're, the air is now rich with dander. But all of those behavioral solutions are pretty hit and miss.
Yeah.
But going in and showing people, hey, when you feel better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, when you're in a different state of consciousness, you're operating in a different world from a different place, and better ideas come to mind. That's just true.
Yeah.
So that would be like saying that you could ruin, you could mess up nature by teaching people about gravity.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
What people then go and do with gravity, I'm sure could mess up nature.
You just reminded me, actually, I'm feeling much better about this now. Thank you. I read a really great book. I actually mentioned this on Earth Day as one of my favorite books that I've read that really transformed my thinking about the environment and kind of the enormous sort of road to change in front of us. And they said we really need to kind of drop the wording, the PR that is sustainability, and really talk about regenerative agriculture, not sustainable agriculture, because sustainable means sustaining what we're already in, which isn't actually helpful at this point.
Right.
Regenerative, which I'm sure if you were a linguist, you could break that down, but it's going back to the generative power of the earth. It's allowing nature to return to its already perfect state, which breeds life naturally.
Right. And
I do feel like that's what one solution is trying to do, is we're not trying to change people. We're trying to kind of, in the environmental sphere, some call it rewilding, that if you kind of allowed farmland, for example, to return to its natural state where it hasn't all been butchered into such sort of aesthetically pleasing rows, and you weren't trying to kill so many things to just grow one monocrop, and that there's a natural balance that takes care of itself when we rewild, when we go back to what was already there. What was always intended to be there. So that's what one solution is really trying to be up to, for sure.
Cool. And if people want to find you, that email address, web address again?
onesolutionglobal.org.
Very cool. I panicked because I remembered at the beginning and I'd forgotten if it was .org or .com. So I just kind of.
And I was with Mara at that. So yeah.
Oh, well, any sort of parting thoughts?
What's your favorite thing you're eating? I feel like I've been trying a lot of different foods and stuff.
I didn't know it was a thing, but the sourdough bread movement.
Do you have like
Nina is in its forefront. She's got a sourdough starter named Seymour.
Seymour, I love it.
Yeah, because you got to, feed me Seymour. It's good.
Yeah.
And it grows, like she'll mark a line, and then like last night she was showing me, and it was here, and now it's this big, and every day we have a new loaf. So my favorite thing I'm eating, even though I don't normally eat bread, is her sourdough.
The sourdough is supposedly good for you, so totally worth it.
Yeah.
Have you seen the meme? It's so funny. It's like a virus came along and told humans, be quiet, get comfortable with your own thoughts. And humans went, nah, I'm going to start making bread from scratch.
I haven't seen it, but that's pretty much our house.
I'm going to send it to you, Anita.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you, Mara.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who tuned in live. And thank you to all of those of you watching the recording.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you soon.
Of course.
Bye.